Hi, how are you? Welcome back. If you are returning, how are you today, you outsider, you? And if you're new here, welcome. Because if you're here and you found me, there's a reason for it. And it's because you're equally as awesome as the rest of us here. And if not, you are just as much universe as I am part of the universe. And you are part of all of us. So there, you are part of something now. Welcome to the community. Anyways, let me introduce myself. If you are new here, my name is Ashley Rose, but you can call me Ash. Like all my friends and how I prefer. Kind of like the Evil Dead. Ash Williams. But anyways, yes, my name is Ash. And I do my makeup. And we talk about bands or anything in the alternative or goth subculture or anything that influences it. This week, as you can tell by the title, we're taking a break from the bands. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite stories, comic book series, which is the Sandman. Obviously, you know, Lord Morpheus, Dream is my man. What can I say? Well, at least he's one of my favorite characters. We'll get into that. Anyways, welcome. Let's get on with what, we've got to get on with. So we are sponsored and of course, by Vampyre Cosmetic, which is phoenixrisingcosmetics.com/ARoseCPE. That's Charlie Papa Echo at the end. You can also get that link down below on the screen in the description as well. You can get up to 20% off on your cosmetic needs. We also have repsports.com. You can use the code ROSENOVA and you can get 15% off of all your nutritional needs as well as Raise Energy. So, yeah. 15% off. So we got energy drinks and we got makeup. All the cosmetics, if you are interested in knowing what I'm using, will be listed on the bottom. Today we are using the Wild Stallions Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure palette. This actually has a lot of different colors in it. I don't know which ones I'm going to use. But today is a long one as far as this recording. And I'm sure it's going to be a bit of an edit, but it's going to be worth it. Now, we will not be talking about everything in Sandman because it is 75 issues. The original, we're not talking about the newer ones that also came out. Well, I'll try to touch base on that maybe in another time, but we're going to talk about Sandman because I feel it's necessarily one of the forms of literature and art that I think is part of the influence in alternative subculture or gothic subculture. A lot of people say The Crow is, yeah, I get The Crow. We will talk about The Crow eventually, particularly when the new film comes out. We'll talk about the comic as well. But Sandman, in my opinion, is also listed on there just because of the type of literature, the themes, and as well as the visual aspect of it. Now, the show is currently available on Netflix. It is a Netflix show. They are continuing with another season. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good adaptation, in my opinion. Is it 100% like the book? Absolutely not, but it is pretty similar, pretty close. So today we are going to be talking more of the comic and yeah. And it's going to take me a bit to get used to where everything's at because I've moved everything due to spring cleaning. It's good to, get some old stuff out, get some new stuff in if you want to get new stuff in. If not, you're just making room for everything. What can I say? So let's start with the beginning, shall we? And I'll just be jumping from point here, point there, like a summary basis of everything because it is a long comic and a lot of it, it's a pretty detailed story, the aspects of different things, but I'm going to try to go over as much as I can. So that's what's important. Morpheus is the Lord of Dreams, and he is one of the 7 siblings, entities, whatever. They're not necessarily gods. Let me adjust my mirror. They're not necessarily gods, but they're pretty similar in the aspect of that. There's 7 of them, yes, including him. And we'll talk about, his siblings briefly. but mainly this is about Morpheus dream. Now, the synopsis and the summary of the story is that he is captured during an occult ritual. So during a ritual, he is captured. He was returning from a lengthy trip across the universe. So he was tired, and it made it somewhat easy to capture him. Now, he was captured in 1916 in the story, and he was held captive for 106 years. People that captured him actually meant to capture his sister Death, who is the oldest, by the way. We'll briefly try to talk about her as quickly as he can. He does escape due to, you know, one of the rituals, the sigil that was keeping him captive was somewhat disturbed, and it was, anyways, needless to say, he escapes. And the point is that he's trying to rebuild his world. He's trying to rebuild the dreaming is where he lives. It's a giant kingdom made of dreams and nightmares, and which anything I say, you know, will be, as we say in sports entertainment, picture-in-picture action on the screen. Now, there are 75 issues in the original printing, and the story was written by Neil Gaiman. Now, Neil Gaiman is the author of such books such as Coraline, as you may know, Good Omens, American Gods, also a very popular one. Good Omens, he was like kind of a co-writer to that. I mean, he was one of the primary writers, to state that, and other novels like M is for Magic, Stardust. He's known for mainly writing a lot of fantasy novels, urban fantasy. He's written some children's books as well. He's written a lot of short stories too. Back to Sandman, Neil did state, you know, he did express an interest in writing comics. This was stated in an interview with Neil that he wanted Sandman to finish when he felt like he wanted it to finish, when he felt done. So that's why it is originally only 75 issues. He didn't want it to necessarily carry on. Reason being is because he did not, you know, fans, as far as when it comes to comics, they tend to blame the series, not necessarily like they just didn't disagree with what a new writer set out to do with the book, because every new writer that gets added to a comic, or as you know, if you're familiar with comic books, the story does adapt and it does change to what's based off of whatever, you know, that writer envisions it to be. So he wanted it to end, you know, when he was ready, when he was like, no, you know what, I no longer want to write Sandman. I don't see the story continuing anywhere. We'll summarize it to that. Now, he didn't necessarily project it to be a huge success, but he wanted to write comics. You know, that is what Neil wanted to do. He would definitely get a chance to do that. This one here. Now, it ending at 75, you know, Neil was one of the only writers at that time at DC Comics that actually accomplished this. You know, once he was done writing Sandman, that was it. That was it for him. So originally he wasn't sure how the success of Sandman was going to go, so he only wrote the primary story at least up to 8 issues, because at least it would be a complete story arc. And then up to 12 would be just short stories, just in case the comic didn't do well and say DC Comics wanted to cancel it. Like, they would phone him up and be like, hey, Neil, you know, things ain't working out. Things ain't working out with the Sandman. So yeah, we got to cut the book. But luckily, Sandman would pick up in sales gradually. Every time a new issue came out, it would pick up. So by the time they reached up to issue 8, Sandman became popular. The sales were consistent and also improving too. And of course, this was just a slow climb. This was a slow build up in sales. Now, was it outselling every DC title? We're not 100% sure. I wasn't there. I mean, I was I was already born during that time, but as far as the sales, I could not tell you if it was outselling the other comics. But DC was really trying to do something different with their Vertigo line, which was DC Vertigo, is what it was published on. Now, Sandman did have other characters throughout the series, such as Constantine, Joanna Constantine. Now, these are two different characters. I want to make that clear because there seems to be some confusion and people think that Joanna Constantine is John Constantine in the show. The fact of the matter is she is a separate character. She's her own character, and they're both in the series. Now, let's go back to how Sandman increased in sales. Now, the graphic novel, according to Neil Gaiman, would actually come by accident. Now you're like, Ashley, how does DC release a graphic novel by accident? Or what goes on? Well, he would state that graphic novels would actually change the way of publishing comics, because you could actually get a collection of a set of issues together, as you know, if you've collected graphic novels. Now, as far as Sandman, the second part of Sandman would turn into a graphic novel after issue 8. Now, the reason why is because this was by accident, according to Neil Gaiman. He said this in an interview, that Rolling Stone's Wet Hot issue in '89 would run an ad for Sandman. Now, as far as, or Hot issue, either way, Rolling Stone offered them an ad. And DC didn't have anything really to like mark. Well, we don't have anything to market as far as with Sandman. Well, however, Sandman was listed in that because Sandman was considered what was hot at the time. So, yep, there we are. That's how they ended up getting an ad, and that actually, in my opinion, would help increase sales, obviously, because they were getting this awesome push by Rolling Stone. You know, this isn't like a comic book publication. This is like entertainment. We're talking about entertainment, music, and all that stuff. Now, they actually rushed the graphic novel. I'm laughing because it's, I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, it's kind of entertaining. They actually rushed the whole graphic novel in 1 week. The whole thing was rushed in 1 week. That includes the art, everything for the ad. So if you look back at the time of the first print of the graphic novel, if it looks a little bit rushed, it's because it was. So now you know. Just a tad. You know now, if you've always wondered. Now, that's just a little bit of history, just a small little like taste of history about, the publication of it. Sandman, the Sandman's actually, well, would you say the Sandman, you know what I'm talking about. You're here, you're following me. We're seeing eye to eye. Is about structural integrity of reality. Now, the great thing about that's the definition or the term of it if you were to search it. But the great thing about a comic book and a story like Sandman is you get to follow and have access to all the different places in time, space, and history. So that's why there's so many stories in 75 issues of what's going on in Sandman. Because you just have the ability, or Dream has the ability to go through all these places, or he's already been through all these places. Because everything dreams. Animals, creatures, demons, everything. Humanity, everyone dreams. And that's why it's believed in the comic that Morpheus is considered to be the most powerful of everyone in the Endless, or at least the strongest member of the Endless. I don't know which color I'm going to use. I mean, there's all these glittery ones, but I think I'm going to use Napoleon and Joan of Arc on here. I think those are the ones I'm going to go for. And yes, I'm talking about the palette. It's nice. Now, there are 7 members of the Endless, as I stated. Dream has like 6 other siblings. Lord Morpheus, Dream, whichever you want to call him, whatever you prefer. You know, who am I to tell you how to address him? But whatever you prefer. Now, there's Dream, of course. Death, who is his oldest sister, which is the second most popular character in the whole series. And I think it's because Dream and Death have the most character development. Well, she has the most character development compared to everyone else in the series, and probably one of the most consistent of the Endless in the story as well. You also have Destiny, you have Destruction, you have Desire, Despair, and Delirium. A lot of D's, you know, a lot of D's. Now, Desire is a handful. Desire is always trying to one-up Dream all the time. Now, what are the universal rules of the Endless? That is, you don't spill the blood of your family, and you don't fall in love with mortals. Now, this is important in the aspect of the story of what we're going to go over. Mainly because this is exactly what Dream does in the entire series. He does this. Sorry, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the series, you haven't read the comic, you should, either way. How do I say this? Dream's is very petty, in my opinion. Very, very petty character. And I'm going to tell you why. And that's the best way I can describe it. Now, throughout the series, you know, Dream has about like several different love interests. I stopped counting them, but I would say about 4. But right now we're only going to talk about 2 of the most important ones because they are the ones that are important in the aspect throughout the whole story. At least throughout the whole series. So if you came here not expecting spoilers, guess what? You're going to get a couple, but it's going to be summarized. We're going to talk about Nada and Calliope. Now, if you've seen the show, you're already familiar with those. But I'm going to tell you just a brief breakdown of what happened with those 2. We're going to start with Nada because she's, you know, the first one. Nada broke Dream's heart. She falls in love with Dream. She's this like queen of her tribe, you know, and she's set to marry, but they're like, hey, who are you gonna marry, you know? And she's like, I'm not sure, but I saw this man with the most beautiful eyes, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Anyways, turns out to be Dream of the Endless, and so they're in love. They're both in love with each other, but it's against the rules. It's against, because she is human, he is of the Endless. Catch where I'm getting at? Okay, so it's forbidden for them to be together. Forbidden. So all the stuff starts occurring to her tribe, you know, all these unfortunate events. I'm just going to summarize it for you. So she ends up trying to take her life, you know, she does. And that breaks Dream's heart. And he takes offense of it. He's so upset by it. He's so heartbroken. So of course she falls down to hell. And he leaves her there. He leaves her there. He leaves her there, and the only way she can get out is if he forgives her, and he refuses to forgive her. So if we're going to fast forward to Calliope. Now, Calliope is a muse. I'm not going to get too into her story because it is a side story, but she does get captured separately at a different point in time. You can watch the show. That story is pretty close to what's in the graphic novel, but I highly recommend you reading the graphic novel because it's more detailed and it's a little bit more scarier. So the two have a son, him and the Muse Calliope. His name's Orpheus. Now, Orpheus, the reason why Dream is upset with Calliope is Orpheus is set to get married. So the night, can't remember if it's necessarily the night of his wedding or the night before his wedding. Either way, his wife-to-be does get killed. Tragic, I know. So he's heartbroken and he wants to go down, you know, and speak to Hades and beg Hades and Persephone, to release his love. You know, he wants a little bit of time. That's what he's going to ask and persuade. So he's asking everyone of the endless, even his mom, you know, to help him. How can he get her to come back, you know, just for a little bit? He just wants a little bit of time for with her, you know, just with her, for her. He wants to be with her, you know, he wants to be with the love of his life. He's heartbroken. Dream doesn't agree with it. Dream tells him that he needs to mourn because it is the mortal way, that he should be mourning, not he shouldn't be doing this, and so he won't help him. So he does end up getting help. You know, he speaks to death, he speaks to everyone. They tell him how to get there. So Orpheus has like this beautiful voice, you know, he can sing, he's musically talented. He sings the song to Hades and Persephone. And sorry, let me clear my throat. He sings the song to Hades and Persephone, begging for him, like, to bring his love. So he makes the ghost or the ghouls or whatever's down there cry, which no one's ever done with his song of plea. So Hades agrees to send his the love of his life with him, but he has to follow a set of instructions, or else she cannot cross back into the living, and he will of course have consequences too. So he says, okay, so he's crossing, and the instruction is for him to not look back no matter what. Not to look behind him, that she's following him out of the gates to the living. So he thinks Hades is playing a horrible joke on him, when in all actuality, the love of his life is walking behind him, and he thinks because he can't hear anything or hear her, she's not there. So he turns around and he sees her, and she vanishes right before they get to the gate. So in his grief, you know, all this stuff happens. He does eventually get ripped apart by I forgot the name of those characters, but they're like these savage women. Anyways, gets ripped apart, and he's left only as a head. And he can't die. So he does speak to Dream, or Morpheus, in regards to this, his father. And his father pretty much leaves him like that. And pretty much states that he pretty much disowns him. He says he doesn't have a son. So he's being cared for by, I believe it's like a community or a tribe. It's like he's being cared for by monks on an island somewhere. I believe it's an island. So that is where that story happens, and that's why he never forgave Calliope. And now we'll get back to that story later. Now, there are some other interesting stories that occur at the convention, because he, he's trying to find the Corinthian. So that's an interesting story. The Corinthian is a runaway nightmare, and there's what else is there? The main premise in the beginning of the book is Dream has to find all his tools. So he's got to find his sand, he's got to find his ruby, and he has to find his helm. And now all these tools help power him of being Dream of the Endless. So the beginning, we'll just cut it short because it's a lot. But the beginning premise of the first book is that's what you're following him doing. John Constantine does come out in the beginning as well. Let's see, what am I missing? I feel like I'm missing. I bought actually these new lip glosses. They're astrological signs. So one is Virgo and one is Sagittarius. Well, I'm a Virgo, that's why I got this one. I got Sagittarius because I like the color. So that's what we're gonna put on. But anyways, back to Dream of the Endless. So he finds all his tools. He eventually gets them, you know, and gets his ruby, his helm. You meet Lucifer. Now, with Lucifer, he does one up Lucifer and wins, of course. And the importance of this is because Dream thinks, you know, he's had a lot to think about, you know, the 106 years he was captive. And he thinks that he might have acted a little too harsh when it comes to Nada. So he decides he's going to go back to hell, free her, talk to Lucifer about it, whatever. So he sends, of course, you know, the twins Cain and Abel are also staying in the dreaming. Sends one of them to tell Lucifer that Dream is to be expected to go over there again. Lucifer says, okay, you know, whatever. You think he's up to something. Well, he is up to something, but not what we think it is. So when Dream gets there, he meets up with Lucifer, and it turns out Lucifer is grown tired of hell. He wants to go do his own thing. So he is leaving hell. And that is when the Lucifer series starts. So check out that series. You can also check out the show too. The show's different, but that is exactly how that series starts, is because he blames Dream for him not wanting to be the ruler of hell, you know, because he lost, blah, 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 you know, sore loser. Anyways, he lost. So he gives Dream the key to hell, which he's going to search for Nada to free her. Anyways, he does eventually find her, frees her, etc., because at this time, this all comes together. At this time, everyone is trying to have a bid over who is going to gain the key to hell. And I'm talking about like all these different types of gods and everything. So that's where Nada is. She's captured by one of them. Anyways, he finds out who, she's released, yada, yada, yada. Turns out he can't give the key to hell to just anyone. So he has to hand it over to angels, because since it was created by God, it has to go to one of them. And then that's where Lucifer's brothers end up taking over hell. And of course, you can read that series, that comic, if you want to go into detail of that, how that occurred. And of course, you meet Death and you understand who she is due to the storyline of the man that can't die. So he's living all these years. We're going to just run through it. Living all these years, refuses to, you know, he thinks that the only reason why people die is because you have to. So that's why he's living all these years, and he meets up with Morpheus every 100 years to find out, you know, if he's changed his mind or what's changed or what he's learned. During that time, he runs into Bill Shakespeare as well, the playwright. And he agrees to write 3 plays for him. So that's their story. Let's see. What else? What else am I going to use? So I should just do my eyeliner and just do my lips, then we'll call it a night, because we're just running a brief summary. You end up reading, oh my God, cannot talk right. You end up meeting Delirium. Delirium because is his youngest sister. She had a different name before she became Delirium, but she is known as Delirium now. So she comes in because she's trying to find one of their siblings. Basically, you get the gist that none of them want to help her. So she goes to Dream, even though she thinks he's going to say no, which he does. But he's heartbroken again, so he agrees to be like, hey, let's go find our brother Destruction. Destruction ran off and left his post because he didn't, I guess he didn't want to be blamed for the aspect of certain things that are happening in humanity, particularly like the creation of like the atom bomb, things like that. I mean, my makeup's all right today. It's not 100% the best, but it's okay. It's doing good, I guess. So they eventually do find Destruction and stuff, and you also meet like characters like Fiddler's Green too in the earlier issues. Back to the second rule that he broke, why I brought it up. Felt like it should be the premise of the whole story, you know, because it technically is. How they shouldn't spill family blood or do anything in effect to that. Well, after, all this time of reflecting, he decides he's going to go see his son Orpheus. Goes and sees Orpheus. Same place that he's left. He left him and disowned him. Takes Delirium with them. Because, Delirium's tagging along. And starts discussing things with Orpheus. About, they're just, they're just chatting about everything. They're just chatting away. And him and his son discuss, everything. So his son and him discussed about how his son's ready to, pass on. It's been all these years. He's been waiting for it. He's been waiting for death. She hasn't come. That is when Morpheus then takes his son's life, Orpheus. And he asks that his son be put to rest as well. So he hands, he hands his head over wraps him up, hands his head over to his caretaker and says, that he wants him to make sure to bury him so he's put to rest. They agree. He leaves, he tells Delirium what happens. I drew a star instead of an X. I usually do an X or a cross, but I decided to do a star. It's all right looking. I don't know. It's okay. Just trying new things out. So Delirium gets the idea that, hey, that this happened, whatever, that he just killed his son. So since he's broken that rule, basically what happens is the Furies seek revenge, the three Furies. And that is, if you didn't want any spoilers, I'm sorry, but that is how the story of the Sandman ends. 75 issues. The Furies take their revenge. And, this is already going on because this has to do with in the story. I'm hopping around a lot, but there's a point for it, I'm telling you. So Dream has another son that is born in the dreaming, but not from him. There's a woman who, her husband passed away, and she was constantly going into her dreams during the storyline of the Vortex. well, that's not the name of the storyline, but that's the time frame is the, you know, the vortex. And Rose, you know, she's the vortex, and then her grandmother was asleep for all these years, gave birth to her mother. The father was Desire, apparently, but Desire's like, nor he or she. Yes, you could say Desire's like non-binary in an aspect. That was because of Desire. That's how that family line's created, and then Rose becomes the vortex. She then passes the vortex back to her grandmother. Her grandmother passes away. Rose inherits everything. Short end of that story. But during that time, her one of the ladies was in mourning, and she would go visit the dreaming because her husband was there, and her husband in that dream was portrayed as the original Sandman, which we're talking about like the first, like we're talking about Golden Age comics. So anyways, get into that another time. Hopefully, maybe. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'm not going to make any promises to you. I'm sorry. So that is how Dream's other son Daniel was born, because since he was conceived and born in the Dream states to her that is her son. So once Dream passes away, or Morpheus, Daniel ends up becoming the new Dream, takes over the Dream. That is where we are. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna start my palette, which I do constantly. So let's see here. But that's just a short summary of what the Sandman is. This, you know, what it's all about. Considered important, I suppose. I think in the midst of, like, you know, with everything with like the Crow, I think it's easily, you know, one that gets forgotten about or gets mixed, you know, lost in the shuffle. And of course, as you can tell by the images, if you are watching, you know, everything on screen, how it has that alternative grunge, but like post-punk style look as far as when it comes to the style of the Endless and how they're dressing. Or even just alternative in general. So yeah, Dream broke the two main rules in the whole story. Fell in love with humans. Fell in love with humans. And killed his own son. So that's it, which is really a shame. It's kind of a pretty sad story, but it's probably one of the best comics written. And I've got powder all over me. That being said, I think I'm gonna try Sagittarius. But yes, definitely watch the show. And I definitely highly recommend you to check out the graphic novel. If it's, you know, graphic novel's not your thing, you can always check out the audiobook. Audiobook is pretty good. I've listened to it a couple of times. And of course, it is in parts as well. So yeah, it's kind of a shame that all that happened, really. Great story. Love it. I mean, obviously, because I have, you know, Morpheus on my hand. But yeah, I mean, need to find my setting spray, and then we can get up out of here. Go enjoy the rest of the night. You know what? I think this is it. Maybe this one. We'll use this one. I was trying to find my other setting spray. I couldn't find it. It probably fell somewhere. So I hope you had a great time. Of course, make sure you like, share, subscribe. All the cosmetics are listed in the description. And if you're listening to this on audio, I'm sorry that you couldn't see the photos, but you could just Google the Sandman or go check it out. And I hope you have a great day, a great month, a great week. Hope to see you again. And if no one told you that they loved you today, just know that I love you. And you're welcome here anytime, outsider. Till then, you have a good night. Bye.